So I'm sitting here today with Candace Hyatt, who's my mother, and who is a very vocal opponent of the Colorado Amendment 2 that would have banned all laws that would guarantee equal treatment of people regardless of their sexual orientation. I'm going to ask her some questions today about that amendment in Colorado and her role in the whole process, and see where that takes us. So just tell me first, if you can, what the climate politically and culturally was like in 1991, 1992, right before the amendment was on the ballot.
When people found out that the amendment was going to be on the ballot, they mobilized, and it became a very polarizing issue, even in Boulder, Colorado, which people perceive as being somewhat liberal. And in that polarization, what happened is that what I perceive to be the right-wing churches really spoke from their pulpits about the importance of voting to support this, because we could not have what were called special rights for gay, lesbian, and bisexual people, because it would open the floodgates to special rights for additional, what they would say would be aberrant behaviors. And what it did for people, I was working in a school district at the time, and what it did for people who were gay, lesbian, and bisexual and very closeted at that time is it increased their level of concern, because there was a lot of fear around it. There was fear from people who supported the amendment because they were afraid that if it didn't pass, that the gay, lesbian, and bisexual people would take over the world. And what the gay, lesbian, and bisexual people felt is that if it did pass, there would be a sanction for people to continue to persecute them.
All right, you mentioned you worked in the Boulder Valley School District at the time. You were working as one of the health coordinators for the whole district at that time, right?
Right, I was one of the coordinators for health education, and in that capacity was asked to serve on a committee at the same time that this amendment was being proposed. And on this committee, we developed an anti-discrimination policy. And certainly we began with thinking about who are the protected classes, and we began with people of different races and ethnicities, and then moved from that to people who were differently able. And then I was basically there to represent gay, lesbian, and bisexual people as a protected group within the Boulder Valley School District. And so while this amendment was being proposed, we were working counter to that in the school district and raised the ire of the Colorado for Family Values group, who would personally send me threatening emails that said, I know where you live, I know where your children go to school. And as this came on the docket for the school board, there was a busload of people from Colorado Springs who were rumored to be appearing at the school board meeting, which was then canceled. When it was held the next week, there was actually physical scuffling in the back of the room as people discussed this particular part of the anti-discrimination policy in the district. So while we were headed in one direction, the state of Colorado was heading in another direction, and our district was really a microcosm of all of the issues that were being raised in the state.
All right, so in the general election in November 1992, this law passed, and making it then illegal for states to pass laws that would guarantee equal rights.
For cities to pass, yeah.
For cities or for, okay.
Yeah.
And what happened immediately after the ballot initiative passed?
Somehow vindicated and could even escalate further around gay jokes, around inappropriate language, around working against this non-discrimination policy. So it further polarized a community and a state.
Okay, so then in 1996, the Supreme Court ruled on this state ballot initiative and said that it was too broad in its powers and that it was discriminating against the whole class of people based basically on nothing but animosity. So when you found out that the Supreme Court of the United States struck down this Colorado ballot initiative, how did you see?
And at that point I was in a school building where I knew there were a number of gay men and lesbian women, and I went to them individually and told them. And the sense of satisfaction that it gave me, number one, to be able to communicate with them so openly in the school district, which now we somewhat take for granted, but then was very much unheard of. And to see the joy and the light in their eyes, and to know that I, in some way, have been instrumental in working for having this law overturned, just as much as I worked to not have it passed in the first place, made me feel good in my heart as well.
That's wonderful. Well, and also you were in the Boulder Valley School District at the time, and Boulder Valley School District was one of the plaintiffs in the case that eventually became Romer v. Evans. And so you just mentioned that there was a sort of vindicated feeling of being able to work in a school district that had a sort of already a de facto sort of non-discrimination policy. What did you see after 1996 in this supposedly somewhat open and accepting community? How did things change after 1996?
One of the things I would say that I remember that I loved was that people began to put posters on their doors with pink triangles that said that they were safe people to talk to. And so if you identified as a straight ally of gay, lesbian, and bisexual people, you could say that you were a safe person to talk to in the school district. Or if you were gay, lesbian, or bisexual, you could put one of those on your door, and you could know that you were not going to lose your job, and that people would honor and respect that in that climate. So I think it was really in that state the beginning of taking some pretty deep-seated issues and putting them on the table, and not allowing people to be totally inappropriate in terms of the kind of language they used, in terms of the decisions that they made, in terms of the jokes that they made, in terms of the culture in school buildings. And it trickled down to the kids. Gay, lesbian, and bisexual kids began to feel safer in coming out in the schools and knowing that it would be accepted.
Were you so active against this amendment?
To me, it was a very clear example of a group of people, particularly in the school district, where ignorant and fearful people think that gay, lesbian, and bisexual people will perpetrate against their kids and turn them into gay people, God forbid. And I did that because I felt that I wanted to advocate for a group of people who was not comfortable or able to advocate for themselves. And I did it because I saw it as a huge injustice and a law that continued to perpetrate fear in our community and divisiveness in our community. And I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. And I would tell you, Jesse, part of the reason I did it is because I thought how important it was for you and your sister to see adult people take a stand about something they felt was very important.
What do you think the major after effects of the Supreme Court case are? What have you seen in Boulder or in Colorado?
I think there have been absolutely huge changes. I don't think that you legislate people's hearts, changes in people's beliefs in their hearts. But I think that you can begin to set norms around what's appropriate and what's not in public settings. And so regardless of how people may feel, they are not as comfortable talking about or discriminating in their language or in their behaviors against this particular group of people because of that legislation. I have seen so many gay people feel so much more comfortable in who they are in their lives. At school district functions, gay people would begin to bring their partners to the functions and feel like it was okay and it was accepted. So I think it really did in some ways change at least the public culture. And I think, ironically, that in some ways, while we think we've made a lot of progress, as we begin to look at the Don't Ask, Don't Tell law and the repealing of that, I think we will begin to see some of the same fears and some of the same ignorance manifested in the arguments against the repeal of that, as we've seen, as we saw, say, even more than 10 years ago.
Well, thank you so much for your hard work after all these years and for taking the time to talk to me today. I'm going to get a close-up of the button that you're wearing.
My No on 2 amendment pin, which I wore with pride.
There it is. Thank you, Candy. Thanks, Mom.